Shalom and Maranatha. Welcome to the Septuagint versus the Masoretic YouTube channel. The only ministry in the world that looks at the Septuagint and the Masoretic text line by line, verse by verse, chapter by chapter, from Genesis to Revelation. Although there's no Septuagint of Revelation, we're going to look at the Old Testament, in Hebrew, the Tanakh. So without further ado, today we're looking at Deuteronomy chapter 27. There are 26 verses in this chapter. Beginning in verse 3, we see the first significant difference here. And you shall write on these stones all the words of this law, as soon as you have crossed Jordan, when you are entered into the land. In the Masoretic text, it says, you shall write upon them all the words of this law. Talking about the stones, when you are passed over, that you may go in unto the land. So we can see what the difference is here is in the Septuagint. You shall do this when you enter. So this is something specific, an instruction, a command for them to do when they enter the land. However, in the Masoretic text, Yah is telling them, or Elohim, or God, or however you want to refer to him as, he's telling them that you must do this in order to gain entry into the land. So that's one of the preconditions, prerequisites in order for you to enter into the land, that they have to write all the words of this law. But that's not what it's saying in the Septuagint. That's not something that is required for them to do to enter into the land, but it is something that they are required to do when they do enter into the land. As soon as you have crossed Jordan, when you are entered into the land. So you will do this, but it's not something that will prevent them from going into the land if they don't write it, although they should be writing it since it is a commandment. Okay, so we clarified that. In the last portion of the verse, it says, and you'll see Lord God. Whenever it says Lord God, I don't say Lord God. I prefer to say Yah Elohim or Yehovah Elohim. In any case, the Lord is Yod He Vav He, and God is Elohim. As you can see on the right, that is a King James version with the, I believe, holy name or sacred name version. It says at the top anyhow. Yeah, holy name King James version. So at the end of verse 3, it does say here, according as Yah Elohim of your fathers said to you, versus Yah Elohim of your fathers has promised you. Okay, that's not the difference we're looking at. It's just before that. It says Yah of your fathers gives you, whereas here it says Yah your Elohim. And we can see that this is consistent throughout this verse. We see it twice, your fathers, and then your fathers again. Here he's calling himself Yah your Elohim. Okay, so that's verse 3. Next we're going to look at verse 9. We're only looking at the differences that are significant enough to be mentioned. Otherwise, you can read about them and study them for yourself in the description box below. Everything that is IG will be ignored. We'll not be presenting those since they're not, in my opinion, big enough to merit mentioning. So in verse 9, the first significant difference is in verse 9, be silent and hear, O Yisrael, versus take heed. So it's one thing to not speak, it's one thing to listen. However, one can be one can take heed yet still be speaking, but one individual, whoever we're talking about, is going to be more attentive if they are not speaking. Okay, so verse 10 is next. It says, a people versus the people. I don't see that anywhere here. Oh, it's at the end of verse 9. Okay, so that was not verse 10, at least in this version. This day you are become a people to Yah your Elohim versus you are become the people. So that is, it is quite a difference, because a people means they are one group of people versus the people means they are the only people and possibly the only people that will ever be of Yah. But that, I'm just inserting that because, when you say the, that's the only. That's the implication there. Whereas now we know that Yah has called the Gentiles. He's opened up the Torah to the Gentiles through the Apostle Paul in the New Testament era and up to today and into the future and forever. Verse 10, continuing on in verse 10, hearken versus obey. The Hebraic perspective of hearken, or the Hebraic understanding of this term, is to listen and obey. So it does include both. However, obeying, I wouldn't say it's a massive difference, but it is something to point out. And then the next one we're looking at is the word shall do has been omitted, and shall do all his commands, and here it doesn't say that in the Masoretic. In verse 14, we're omitting that. Verse 15, we have an omission of the word place. In a secret. Okay, it says, the work of the hands of craftsmen, and shall put it in a secret place. Here we see that in brackets, but they would not know that it would be the word place if the Septuagint did not exist. There's so many instances of this, you could even write a book on that alone. Okay, next. Verse 16. Big difference here is the word dishonours. Cursed is the man that dishonours his father or his mother. And all the people shall say, so be it. So that's in the Septuagint. So the word dishonour means to shame, or you do not treat your father or mother with dignity and respect. On the other hand, the Masoretic text uses the expression sets light. Cursed be he that sets light by his father or his mother. So what does that mean? Could it mean a literal light, like a candle? If you set a light by your father or your mother and perhaps they are burned? Or is it more of a understood in a spiritual sense or not in a physical sense, meaning to treat them lightly, that is with no respect? So it's a little cryptic, somewhat cryptic, versus the Septuagint, which is just explicitly, straightforward, talking about dishonoring your parent. Verse 17, these are marks to mark the boundary of land. Okay, so cursed is he that removes his neighbor's landmarks, and all the people shall say, so be it. So these are literal marks to mark the boundary of a land. So we have various borders of different countries, but in order to distinguish where the borders are, where they're located, they will put physical landmarks or a dividing line, something that should not be moved. So whoever moves those landmarks will be cursed as a result. Verse 18, next, we see a significant difference here. Cursed is he that makes the blind to wander in the way, versus to make the blind to wander out of the way. So in the first version, in the Septuagint, it says, in the way, meaning these blind are walking in the journey. So they are walking in the path, but they are wandering in the wrong direction. Or perhaps they are wasting their time. Verses in the Masoretic text, they are all together off the track. They get off track. So they're not exactly on the right path. They're off the track. They're not even on the right path altogether. They're not on the right road. So if you're supposed to be on a specific road, let's say you're driving down the highway, let's just say Highway 27, if there's such a thing. And so in the Septuagint, if they're on Highway 27, they are on Highway 27, but they're going the wrong way. They're supposed to be going, instead of southbound, they're going northbound. So they're going the wrong direction, or perhaps they're just dilly-dallying. However, in the Masoretic text, they're not even on Highway 27. They're on Highway 67. So they're not even on the right path. And that is because someone made them wander out of the way. They're not in the right way. However, in the Septuagint, it's a little more subtle than the Masoretic text, because they are in the right way, but they're not wandering in the right direction. So they're wandering in the way. So it's framing itself. You could even use the analogy of the Pharisees and Sadducees, or religious leaders, even in our day, who use the labels of Christian or Judeo-Christian or Messianic or whatever it is, whatever, even Muslim, and they will say this is the right path, but although the believers, their disciples, their followers, whoever it is who are listening to them, believe that this person is leading them towards paradise or towards their ideal self of what they should become or what they could become, their potential, they are not leading them in the right direction. Yes, they're in a certain way. Maybe it's Christian, maybe it's Jewish, maybe it's Muslim. Whatever it is, they are not going in the right direction. They're wandering off. They're wandering in the way. They are perhaps wasting their time or wandering in the wrong direction. It's hard to say which it is, but they're wandering. They're not marching forward. They're not progressing. They're not going towards the goal. They're not objective-oriented, you could say. They're not goal-oriented. They're just, or maybe they are goal-oriented, but they're not going towards the correct goal. We got two verses to look at. Verse 23. A big difference here. It says here, accursed is he that lies with his daughter-in-law. And all the people shall say, so be it. And the next curse is he that lies with his wife's sister. Okay, so we have two different types of people. We have a man who is committing adultery with his daughter-in-law. So this is his son's wife. And it does not mention whether the son died, or in the second example, or the second command, rather, his wife's sister. So this would be, his wife's sister. So it does not mention whether the wife's sister's husband had died. But in any case, it doesn't have to mention that, or it just does not mention it. These things are not to be done. These things are not to be done, to lie with your son's wife or your own wife's sister. It does create jealousy in that second instance, but those are commands. And then we look at the Masoretic text. It's not expressed in the same way. It's not even the same kind of person. It is somebody sleeping with his mother-in-law. So this is the wife's, because the person is a man, he that lies with his mother-in-law. So this is the wife's mother. I don't believe that would be something very common in that time, especially since a mother-in-law would not be fertile anymore. And in the Septuagint, however, these two individuals, the daughter-in-law, would most likely still be fertile, or fertile, however you pronounce that, but she would be able to child rear or bear children, as well as a wife's sister, assuming the wife is 20, 30 years old, but has not gone through menopause. And you have the sister, possibly even younger, who knows? It doesn't say the age of the sister, but in all likelihood, these are young people. Okay, so that's verse 23. And the last verse we're going to look at is verse 26. It says here, "Cursed is every man that continues not in all the words of this law to do them. And all the people shall say, so be it." So yeah, it's one thing to go to this channel or for me to read these words and just read them as words and not take them as instructions as to how to live my life. Not take them as advice or commandments specifically of how one is to conduct, how one is to think, to express themselves, to how to live their life, in which direction does one's life go, what motivates you to do what you do. It's the words of this law. It's something that must be done and said and thought about, meditated when you think about King David. Let's look at the Masoretic text now. It says, "Cursed he that confirms not all the words of this law to do them." So the difference here is in the Septuagint, you continue to do these things. You're living it. In the Masoretic text, it says confirms not. So you're giving lip service. You're confirming, yes, I'll do it. I will confirm to do this instead of just doing it. So lip service versus living it. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much for your time. I hope to continue the momentum moving forward. A lot of staying consistent and posting content on YouTube or whatever platform it is to have momentum. And in the last while now, I don't know how many months it's been, but since the last video in this series, it's been at least 4 or 5 months. So I do apologize for that. I want to continue this momentum moving forward and complete this book before the end of this month of July in the year 2022. And just thank you very much for your time. May God bless you and make your way prosperous. Until next time, this is the Septuagint versus the Masoretic channel. Shalom again and Maranatha.